Hey everyone, welcome back to another Ymir Skull Wallet Sew Along Day. This is kind of a bonus content, I guess you could say, going over custom flap options in case you don't always want the skull flap option. I did make a couple modifications to the pattern. I hope they're clear to everyone, but definitely ask questions if you need further help or I didn't explain something well enough for you. Anyway, I go over two different options. Unfortunately, because of technology issues with my Cricut, I only sew the cauldron shape throughout this sew along, but let's go ahead and get started. Okay, so first of all, you need to pick which image you want. Pay attention to the height of the image. You may have to reprint a couple times to test the size of the image and make sure it works for this project. Not all images are going to work. This one worked really well because I just folded in half and it becomes the flap. It was really good size. This image is the other one I show you how to do, and it did not get folded in half. That would have been really skinny, so it ends about here. But I'll show you both. I don't show you sewing both of them or even finish both of them, but I'll show you how to kind of measure and use both types of images. So for ones that work by folding in half, obviously you're going to do that. Pick whichever side you like best. Obviously the cauldron is different both sides. I chose the side with kind of the contents coming out. Also throughout this pattern, I'm going to show you pattern pieces from the original pattern, but I don't ever show you the full one just to be respectful. So I do apologize. It's a little convoluted on how to show you all. But basically you're going to grab piece 2 of 2 from pattern piece A, which is the skull side. Okay. I added length to it. Okay, so I added 1/4 inch for seam allowance and 1/2 inch just to give a little bit more room in the wallet. So just remember, anything you do to side A, you have to do to piece B. So if you add 1/2 inch like I did, then you also have to add 1/2 inch to piece B. Don't worry about the seam allowance. But see how the original one is kind of tight? If you only carry cards, this is great. This is perfect size for me because that's all I carry. But if you want a little bit more room, I wanted to show you guys how to do that as well here. Okay, so adding that 1/2 inch I found was pretty perfect as far as extra room. Again, the 1/4 inch seam allowance is preference. I'm comfortable sewing 1/4 inch. If you need more space to work with, then add more. Okay, it's not gonna mess it up. Okay, so this piece is gonna be matched up. Okay, so this is one that's uncut, and I'm going to show you how I cut it. So just with the ruler, I'm marking. At this point, I added 3/4 inch to this piece. So 1/4 inch seam allowance, as well as 1/2 inch for the extra space. Okay, and then you just draw the line. You can draw a line or cut it. I cut it directly. Okay, so this is the piece that's cut out. Again, not showing the whole piece, but this is the piece that's cut out. Okay, so if you're using like this, that's half. You could cut it too. Let's make this easier. Okay, set the other piece aside. So now you just have the 1/2 image that we're going to turn into the flap. Okay, so on the skull piece, you're also going to want to cut out this. Okay, so this part here. So once you have the zipper box cut out, now comes kind of the customization of the flap part. And this is really important to get correct here. So you're going to line up, and I'm trying to, again, not show you the whole pattern piece, or at least not against the measuring table. But you're going to line your image up here, which is why you cut that out now. You're not going to want your image to go past the zipper box, just because the zipper's in there. It makes it a little difficult. You're going to trace around here, okay? Don't tape this together yet, but kind of line it up height-wise and trace it. This will help you decide what gets cut out. So I'm going to leave the foot out. I kind of went back and forth about whether to leave the cauldron handle out, but that did go over the edge at the end. So I did cut a piece of vinyl out just to play with it, and decided against it at the end. But go ahead and trace your pattern, your skull pattern piece, so pattern piece A, 2 of 2, onto your new image that you want the new pattern piece to be. Okay, so once you have that image traced, go ahead and take a look at it. See how it goes around. So you have the skull there. The foot definitely sticks out, so I'm going to leave that off. If I left it on, it goes way past here, which is the end of the wallet, which would just mean it's kind of floppy, even if I put 2 layers of vinyl on there. And it would just kind of catch on everything and be a weak point. So I am going to take that off. I'm not going to leave that there. So at this point, you would follow the curve of your image, okay? And the reason we put the skull on there is to make sure that none of the cauldron in this case goes way out of bounds of where the skull is. None of it really goes too far past it. The handle of the cauldron's the only really thing in the foot, so that tells you that the foot should stay off. The cauldron handle I could have moved in, which I attempt to do and decide later on that it didn't look so great in another position. But yeah, so go ahead and cut out your image carefully, and we'll tape it to the pattern piece here. So another thing to pay attention to, since we are altering the pattern with our own custom flaps, is to check the magnet placement. So I'm doing this by holding it up to piece 1 of 2 on pattern piece B, which is basically the lining. Here you can see the handle sticks out. This is where I kind of decide to ditch the handle and cut that off. So I am going to cut this off here, and then we're going to attach this cauldron piece to piece A, 2 of 2. Okay. So you want to make sure this image is how you want it to be. Make sure any curves, edges, whatever, exactly how you want it to be, okay? So now we're going to put it on this piece we've already added to it, and you're going to line it up with the zipper box as 1 edge, and then also the top and bottom. Okay, at this point you're going to tape it. I also glue it just to kind of make sure it's really there. So go ahead and attach that. Okay, so once you're satisfied, we're going to cut off these bits that overhang. Depending on what image you used, you may not have any parts that overhang, but I did. So I'm going to trim those off and we'll have our new flap shape. Okay, and there you go. This is our new flap shape for the cauldron, and I am just writing notes for later because sometimes I like to reuse my pattern pieces, especially when I've gone through all this trouble. So 1/4 inch seam allowance, 1/2 inch for extra room. Again, totally your choice on what kind of seam allowance you're looking at and what kind of extra room you want, if any. Okay, I added seam allowance because this piece I'm doing in black with the green accent, and the other part of piece A I'm doing in the print. Okay, so I printed out multiple pieces of multiple pictures of the cauldron so that I could cut the green part and the handle out of one of the other pieces. I am playing with the option of moving the handle here, but like I said earlier, I got rid of that idea and didn't go with that. Okay, so you're going to go ahead and cut all of this out like normal at this point. Another thing to pay attention to is the magnet placement. So check your magnet placement. It may not be able to stay the same as the original pattern. So I didn't need to change the magnet placement because of the 1/2 inch extra room I added, or the seam allowance, because the seam allowance is going to be eaten up, right? But I needed to add it because I changed the shape from the skull to the cauldron. One of the magnets ended up being in the divot under the lip. So I used this piece to check where the magnets lined up and adjusted accordingly. For this shape, I had to move the magnets 3/4 of an inch up. So back away from the edge on the cauldron. So when you do that, make sure you adjust both pieces, because otherwise the 1/2 inch you add is irrelevant. Also, if you add or if you're making these two pieces different prints, so like I did the cauldron on the flap side and I did that in black. This piece, which is still piece A, I made this a print. So you have to add the seam allowance here and on the cauldron side. Now, if you decided you wanted a custom shape and you don't want to add, like, let's say you did the cauldron shape like I did, but you don't want a print, you want it all black, don't add seam allowance. Just tape together like normal and add the 1/2 inch length at the end of this piece A. You'll still get the extra room you needed. Just adjust the magnet even more than you would for the flap, okay? Just pay attention to that. But here I'm adding the 1/4 inch seam allowance because I am attaching a print to a solid, okay? So last thing you need to pay attention to about altering the flaps is the Decoville piece that goes here. So I made 2 identical flaps, and if you remember the skull piece for the Decoville, that side of the Decoville didn't go over too far, just enough to really cover the magnets and be in the flap. So it didn't go all the way to the zipper pocket at all. So I just went ahead and kind of drew a line. I just kind of eyeballed it. I didn't want the Decoville in the bend of the wallet, so in the fold. So I kind of just estimated just, couple inches in. And then here, because you're going to leave it out of the seam allowance at the edge, you want to just kind of draw it smaller. And you don't have to make a new piece after you're done with your original piece. You can just cut that one down like this. But this piece is essentially the new Decovil piece for this custom flap. Okay, so once you have everything cut out, this is what your new flap is going to look like. We're going to attach the zipper first. And your design may change your order of operation. My design I chose for this one is rather simple. I really only have this part. And I want to put the zipper in first because I don't want to stitch two lines over the green piece, okay? So I'm going to attach the zipper just like normal, and we're going to wait to attach, if you have two pieces, we're going to wait to attach the two pieces of pattern piece A together until the zipper is attached, okay? So I'm going to attach the zipper and then sew the green piece on, and we'll go from there. So one step at a time. I'll just show you my order of operation here. Okay, and so like last time, we're going to pull our threads to the back and tie them off to secure them. And this is what it'll look like. We're going to move this fabric out of the way because when we sew the top green piece, we don't want to catch this flap because we're going to need it to close the zipper pocket. It's just going to be stuck to the tape. Don't be afraid to pull it back more. But I'm just going to clip this out of the way. And if it sews in a little bit, it's fine, but we don't want to sew this piece of fabric down. Okay. So the green piece kind of goes here, and I'm going to use the piece of paper that I cut it out from to kind of help line up where I want to put it. But that again is totally your personal preference, and I even moved it after I used the paper to line it up. Okay, now that it's where you want it, go ahead and top stitch it at your machine and watch out for the clips. So again, we're going to go ahead and pull the threads to the back and tie it off to secure. And you'll notice when I flip this over that I did catch some of the top of the pocket liner in it, which is totally okay because there's still enough to secure, to close up the pocket lining. But that's why we clipped it out of the way, because otherwise I would have sewn this piece down and you wouldn't have been able to close the pocket properly. Okay, so you're going to go ahead and close the pocket like normal, and yeah, we'll move on from there. Okay, so now that your pocket's sewn, go ahead and trim seam allowance like normal. And then we're going to clip the pocket out of the way as we join the two pieces of part A together. Okay, so you're going to grab your other piece of pattern piece A. Again, make sure both have added seam allowance for this, otherwise it's going to end up being smaller, even if you didn't add that extra space. This is why. Again, I used 1/4 inch seam allowance here, but if you want 1/2 inch, go for it. But we're just going to sew a line. And now that it's sewn, this is what it's going to look like. Leave that clipped, and then you can top stitch either direction if you want to top stitch that one or top stitch the other way. I top stitched this one on the black piece, just personal preference. And this is what it's going to look like top stitched. And this is your full piece A with the custom flap. So you can iron on the two pieces of Decoville Heavy and the magnets, and then we're going to put it all together. So this is clipped together just like how we did before in the normal pattern with the glue, as well as all the clips obviously. Even if you added the extra 1/2 inch for extra room in the wallet, the distance between the card slots and the slip pockets will be the same. Don't change that distance to accommodate. So, and you'll need the pattern to tell you what that distance is, but keep it. So once you have it clipped to your liking, you're going to go ahead and take it to your machine and sew all the way around. And there you have it. This is your finished wallet with custom flap. Again, let me know if you have any questions down below and I'm happy to help you. In a little bit, I'll go over kind of another flap style instead of folding the image in half, but I don't have the finished item because I had technology issues with my Cricut. Okay, so now on to the second option that I did. Okay, so you're going to need a fresh copy of this piece, and I'm going to add that same room over here, and just like I did on the other one. And I'm showing you this because this image is not a fold in half. This is gonna be different. So go ahead, if you're adding space to this one because it's different vinyl than piece 1 of 2, or if you just want to add extra flap space, whatever, go ahead and do that, and I'll be right back. So I'm just showing you how I added flap space. I'm just drawing on the extra space around the paper before I cut out the pattern piece that I'm using. So I added 3/4 of an inch. Again, 1/4 of an inch for seam allowance. You can increase or decrease that. Seam allowance is only needed if you're doing two different colors that you're combining for piece A. If you're not, then don't even worry about adding. Just cut out like normal and tape the two pieces together and then do your custom flap. I'm also adding extra room here, so 1/2 inch for extra room, 1/4 inch for seam allowance. Again, this is completely optional based on what you want to do with your wallet. So again, make sure you cut out the zipper box in addition to the rest of the pattern. piece, and we're going to use the zipper box to mark our quibbler image here that I'm using, okay? So again, the cauldron was different. You could fold in half. It was a beautifully sized image to just fold in half and be almost perfect size. This one is not. It would be a really, really narrow flap, which is not what I want. Plus, I'd waste all that, awesome image for all those layers. Yeah, so you kind of figure out where you want it. I don't want it to stick too far out from the edge of the skull, because the skull sits kind of close to the edge of the wallet, but there is a little bit of wiggle room. The quibbler image is not perfectly square. It's kind of wiggly, like wavy lines. So I'm just kind of eyeballing it here. I am marking along this side of the zipper box, and that's going to mark where it cut. Okay, so now you're going to go ahead and cut down the line you drew. And just like before, we're going to attach this to our other skull piece, and that'll become the new flap. Thank you everyone for joining us on another sew along. A special thank you to Erin from Diamonds and Coal for allowing us to do this with her pattern. I hope you all enjoyed the extra bonus video here of the custom flap, and I hope you join us for our next sew along, which should be ears in August. Okay, if you're not part of our sew along group on Facebook, go ahead and join so you can see updates. I already posted the supply list or recommended supply list as well, and I'll go ahead and post in there the quibbler custom flap here once I get my Cricut fixed too. Again, thank you all so much for being here, and let us know if you have any questions. We're happy to help. Thanks.